Assalamu alaikum students. I hope you all are well, safe and healthy at home. I'm your course instructor Farzana Khan and I am here with another topic of semantics, presupposition and entailment. Basically this course is semantics and pragmatics because in the very first lecture we have discussed that what is the role of pragmatics when we talk about the study of meaning. It is not only semantics, it is pragmatics too. Well, in today's class, you will learn about presupposition and entailment, two important concepts. So let's start today's lecture. So pragmatics is the study of dexes, implicature, presupposition, speech acts, and aspects of discourse structure. Right, although further terms like speech acts, implicature, dexes, these all terms and concepts we will discuss one by one in the coming classes. But in today's lecture, we will specifically talk about the presupposition and entailment. So, when we talk about presuppositions and entailments, these are basically two concepts of what is communicated but not said. Means these are those points which basically related to the communication, related to the utterance, but particularly these are those points which are not as it is stated. These are unstated concepts. So in today's class, we'll talk about the presupposition and entailment, that how these are unstated in the communication and how do we get the presuppositions and entailments from the utterances of the speakers. So while defining presupposition, we can say that presupposition is something which the speaker assumes to be the case prior to make an utterance. Means it is assumption which is made by the hearer, by the listener, that speaker has assumed something when he utters certain sentence. When he utters something, means something has been assumed by the speaker when he stated something, and that assumption is basically the presupposition, and it is what which has not been stated in the sentence, but it is something which is basically on the basis of which the utterance has been made. So speakers, these are speakers who have presuppositions, not the sentences, because the speakers utter the sentences, and when they do utter sentences, at that time they presume something, they assume something on the basis of which they do utter some sentences. Right, so speakers, not sentences, have presuppositions. You need to keep this point in your mind, that presuppositions is related to the speakers, because speakers assume some things before they utter, because their utterance is based on their assumptions, and presupposition is symbolized with this symbol. This is the symbol which is used to tell others that this is the presupposition of the particular sentence or utterance. As I'll explain later on in the coming slides, that what is the presupposition of the sentences, at that time I'll use this symbol. So keep it in your mind. This is the symbol of presupposition. Let me explain with an example that if someone tells you your brother is waiting outside for you, right? So it is an obvious presupposition that you have a brother, although it has not been stated in this statement, but it has already been assumed by the speaker that you have a brother. That's why he has stated that your brother is waiting outside for you. So with this example, you can also understand that presupposition is made by the speaker, not the sentences. Secondly, presupposition is unstated statements. Here in this statement, speaker has said that your brother is waiting outside for you. So he didn't say that you have a brother, but on the basis of this sentence, it can be understood. Basically, it is the presupposition that you have a brother. So this is the presupposition of this particular utterance, that you have a brother. So, and the point is that the presupposition, the concept, the notion of presupposition is basically given by the German philosopher, logician and mathematician who was a French. Right, in 1952, he has given this concept of presupposition. So let me explain with another example that Kepler died in misery, right? And the second sentence is Kepler did not die in misery, right? These two are the sentences which are presupposing and presupposition of these two sentences that the Kepler actually existed, right? That's why someone is saying that Kepler died in the misery. It means Kepler exists, right? It has existed, or it existed, he existed, right? And in the second statement, Kepler did not die in misery. It means he existed. That's why on the basis of this assumption, these sentences have been made by the speaker. So they presuppose that Kepler actually existed. So later on, the English philosopher Bertrand Russell has basically argued that there are basically three major points or three meanings of the statement, which we can say that the presupposition on the basis of the utterance. So he stated that he proposed that this involves three assertions. There exists an X, like once we said that the King of France is wise. So there exists an X such that X is a King of France. It has been pre-assumed by the speaker, right? So there is no other entity that is a King of France because there is one X, right? So there is no other entity. And third point is that X is wise, because it has been presupposed that X is the King of the France and X is wise, and there is no other entity that is a King of France. So according to Bertrand Russell, it basically has three meanings. Well, I hope the point of presupposition is clear in your mind now. Let me tell you the triggers of presupposition. In any language, there are some expressions or constructions which can act as the sources of presuppositions. And these kind of constructions or expressions are called presuppositions triggers, because on the basis of those constructions or expressions, presuppositions occurs. So the expressions and constructions, what are those expressions and constructions which are the sources and which are called the triggers of the presuppositions? Let me tell you the triggers. So, and the examples with presupposition triggers, basically the first example is definitive descriptions. Let me explain with an example. John saw the man with two heads, right? So it's basically the description of the existence of something is basically telling us there exists a man with two heads. So this is the symbol of presupposition, and this is the presupposition of this particular sentence or statement. Other presupposition triggers are factive verbs. Factive verbs tell us about the presupposition of sentences. John realized that he was in debt. So here the factive verb realized is telling us that John was in debt. Although he was not aware, now he came to know. But this sentence is telling us that John was in debt. So the next presupposition triggers are the change of state of verbs, because these are the sources which tell us the presupposition of the sentences, that what the speaker has pre-assumed before stating or before uttering any sentence, but it has not been stated in the statement. So John began to beat her husband. So here is the change. Here a change in the state of the verb is telling us, is triggering the presupposition that John hadn't been beating her husband. Before that utterance, he was not beating, but he began to beat her husband. So iterative and other presupposition triggered the flying saucer came again. It when came again is giving us, here is a trigger which is telling us the flying saucer came before. Right? So then fifth presupposition triggers are temporal clauses. For instance, when we say while Chomsky was revolutionizing linguistics, the rest of social science as asleep. So Chomsky was revolutionizing linguistics as the presupposition of this sentence, which is based basically on the temporal clause, which is this one. So cleft sentences. It was Henry who killed Rose. Presupposition is that someone killed Rose. The next triggers are comparisons and contrasts. Carol is better linguist than Barbara. Here it has not been stated that Barbara is a linguist, but the comparison is telling us that if Carol is a linguist and we are making the comparison of Carol with the Barbara, it means that Barbara is also a linguist. So the presupposition of this sentence is Barbara is a linguist. So keep this point into your mind that even the negative form of above sentences has the same presupposition. If I say the Carol is not better linguist than the Barbara, again we can say that Barbara is a linguist, right? I hope all these points are pretty clear into your mind. Now I'll tell you the relationship between two presuppositions. When we say Mary's cat is cute, so the presupposition Mary has a cute cat. Because on the basis of this statement, we are saying that Mary has a cute. So we can say that P presupposes Q. If there is no P, then we cannot say, because when it's not presupposition, again presupposition still exists. So this is the relationship between two presuppositions, that Mary's cat is Q, Mary has a cat. So presupposition P is equal to Q, and this is the symbol of presupposition. So as I already told you that even in the negative situations, the presupposition still remain the same. So if the speaker denies the proposition P not P, the proposition Q doesn't change. For instance, if we say that Mary's cat isn't cute, so it's not P, right? So Mary, again, still this sentence is proposing that Mary has a cat, right? So not P presupposition Q is equal to not P presupposes Q. So this is basically the relationship between two presuppositions. Whether it's a negative situation, again presupposition exists. So let me tell you now the types of the presupposition. First type is existential presupposition. The second is factive. The third one is lexical presupposition. Fourth is structural. The fifth is non-factive. And sixth is counterfactual. You need to keep it in your mind that we consider potential presuppositions which can only become actual presuppositions in context with speakers. So now I'll elaborate these six types of presuppositions one by one with the example. So the first kind of presupposition is existential presupposition. As the name implies, it is related to the existence of the noun. So speaker is committed to the existence of the entities which are named not only in the possessive constructions but in any definite noun phrase. Because what the speaker uttered, it tells us about the existence of something. Sometimes the name of the entity has been used and sometimes in the possessive constructions. So how? Let me explain. In the noun phrase, in the Cold War, was ended, right? So this sentence presupposes that the existence of the entities it refers to, in this case, the Cold War. So this sentence is presupposing that there is a Cold War, right? So this is on the basis of the noun phrase Cold War and telling about the existence of the entity of Cold War. Possessive constructions. So the existential presupposition also indicates through the possessive constructions. For instance, when we say Tony's car is new. So here it means the speaker has assumed that we can presuppose that Tony exists and that he has a car. So this is basically existential presupposition. And when we say the World War ended or the Cold War ended, it again through the noun phrase telling us about the existence of the Cold War, means that before the time of the utterance, there was the existence of that particular entity. The second kind of presupposition is factual presupposition. It basically tells us some facts on the basis of some verbs. Because we identify it on the basis of certain verbs, it identified by the presence of some verbs such as know, realize, be glad, be sorry, etc. So let me explain with some examples. Here you can see she didn't realize she was ill. So here the verb realize is telling us that she was ill. He was ill, right? So here this is basically factive presupposition which is identified on the basis of certain verbs. Realizes has indicated that he was ill. In the second example, you can see we regret telling him. So we told him. It has been presupposed that we told him. So I wasn't aware that she was married. Again, the verb aware is indicating the presupposition in this statement. She was married. So it isn't odd that he left early. So the odd is basically the verb which is making it clear that he left early. And the last sentence, I'm glad that it's over. It means it's over. These are the presuppositions of all these statements, and the symbols have been used. So these presuppositions have been identified on the basis of the verbs. So when such type of some words helped us and in identification of the presupposition, so such type of presupposition is called factive presupposition because these verbs indicate what is the fact. And third type of presupposition is lexical presupposition. Here we do identify the presupposition on the basis of some lexeme, the words. That's why it is called the lexical presupposition. In using one word, the speaker can act as if another meaning will be understood, because the speaker, as I already told you, that presupposition is made by the speakers, not by the utterances. So a speaker presumes something and indicates through some lexeme, through some words, and on the basis of those words which can be called the presupposition triggers, we do identify that he or she has pre-assumed something, presupposes something. For instance, Mary stopped running. So the presupposition is that she used to run. So the stopped running here, stopped is giving us, indicating that she is used to run. Again, you are late again. So in this sentence, the word again is basically telling us that the speaker has presupposed that you were late before. So you are still such a bad driver. Again, the word still indicating that you were a bad driver. It basically still has been used by the speaker, and it is indicating that the speaker has presupposed that you were a bad driver. So the words stop, again, and still are taken to presuppose an other unstated concept. So this is called the lexical presupposition. Fourth kind of presupposition is structural presupposition. It is assumption which is associated with the use of certain structures in which the WH questions are used to construct the sentence, and it is constructed by the speaker, so it means the speaker has already assumed something. When someone asked, when did she travel to USA? It means with the, this structure of the sentence, the insertion of the question when, question word when, is indicating that the speaker has assumed that she traveled to USA. Right? So in the second example, you can see, where did you buy the book? Right? So here again the insertion of the WH question is indicating that the speaker has assumed that you bought the book. So the presupposition of this sentence is she traveled, and the presupposition of second sentence is you bought the book, and this is the symbol of presupposition. And this presupposition is called structural presupposition because it indicates it is associated and related to the structure of the sentence. Fifth kind of presupposition is non-factive presupposition. As the name implies, non-factive means it is not based on the fact. So there are again certain words which are used by the speaker, and on the basis of which we can understand the speaker has pre-assumed something. So it is an assumption refer to something that is not true. Right? For example, verbs like dream, imagine, and pretend. When these words are used by the speaker, so we can say the speaker has assumed something which is not fact. So when these words are used with the presupposition that what follows is not true, because these words tells us that what the writer is stating, it's not true. And I dreamt, for instance, when the writer or someone says, when a speaker says, I dreamed that I was rich. So here the word dream is basically indicating that I was not rich. Right? In the second example, you can say, you can see here, we imagined that we were in London. So again, the word imagine is basically telling us it has been used by the speaker, and the speaker has assumed that we were not in London. So these words are basically, we can say, the presupposition trigger. Again, when it comes to the kinds and the types of the presupposition, on the basis of these words, we can say the factive presupposition are when we say realized and know. These are basically the words which indicate the factive presupposition. When it comes to imagine and dream and pretend, then we can say that the speaker has pre-assumed that is not the fact. The last and sixth kind of presupposition is counterfactual presupposition. It is the assumption that what is presupposed is not only untrue, but is the opposite of what is true, or contrary to the facts, as the name indicates. So it basically, we can find such type of presupposition in the conditional structures. For instance, if you were my daughter, I wouldn't allow you to do this. When the speaker is saying, if you were my daughter, I wouldn't allow you to do this. So contrary to this fact is that you are not my daughter. So it means the speaker has assumed that you are not my daughter. This is the presupposition of this statement. So if I were rich, I could buy a Ferrari, right? So here, if the speaker is stating this statement, this contrary to this statement is that I'm not rich. So speaker has pre-assumed before utterance that he is not rich. That's why he is saying. And in this sentence, there is the contradiction. There is contradiction of the fact. That's why it is called the counterfactual presupposition. After presupposition, the next concept is entailment. Basically, entailment is not a pragmatic concept. It is defined as what logically follows from what is asserted in the utterance. It is symbolized as in this way, because I already told you the symbol of the presupposition, and this is the symbol of entailment. In presupposition, you learned that presupposition is related to the speaker. These are the speakers who made presupposition, because they do pre-assume something, and on the basis of their assumption, they do utter something. But when it comes to entailment, sentences, not the speakers, have entailments. Right here, not the speakers, but sentences have entailments. So, how the sentences have entailments, let me tell you. So, speakers have presuppositions while sentences have entailments. For example, Susan's sister bought 2 houses. So, this sentence has presupposition that Susan exists and that she has a sister. But when we talk about the entailment, so this sentence has the entailments that Susan's sister bought something, a house, and other similar logical sequences, and now she has 2 houses. So the entailments are communicated without being said and are not dependent on the speaker's intentions, but presupposition is basically related to the speaker and to the intentions of the speakers. So the difference of presuppositions and entailment. Presupposition, the speaker assumes to be the case prior to making an utterance, because presupposition is done by the speaker. It is the speaker who assumes before making utterance, and speakers, not sentences, have it. Presuppositions is related to the speakers, not the sentences. More speaker-dependent notion. Presupposition is speaker-dependent notion. When we talk about entailment, it is something logically follows from what is asserted in the utterance. And it is sentences which have entailment, not the speakers have it. So, entailment is naturally logic and less discussed as compared to the presuppositions. Let me explain with an example the difference between presupposition and entailments. Mary's brother bought 3 houses. This is the sentence, this is the statement. So the presupposition of this sentence is Mary exists, right? And Mary has a brother. And other presupposition is that Mary has only one brother, because here the distinction among the brothers has not been mentioned. So it is indicating that Mary has only one brother. It means the speaker has assumed that Mary has only one brother, and speaker has also assumed that Mary has a lot of money. That's why the Mary bought 3 houses. So the presuppositions of this statement is that the speaker pre-assumed Mary exists, Mary has a brother, Mary has brother, and Mary has only one brother, and Mary has a lot of money. When it comes to entailments, basically we can say the entailment of this sentence is Mary's brother bought something. He bought 3 animals. He bought 2 horses. He bought 1 horse, etc. This is the entailment. The logical fact related to the sentence or statement. So entailment is related to the utterance, the statement, sentences, and presupposition is related to the speaker, that what the speaker has assumed, pre-assumed while uttering. So this is the difference between presupposition and entailment, and I hope the points, the concepts of entailment and presuppositions are pretty clear in your mind now. And in today's class, we basically discussed about the 2 important concepts, presuppositions and entailments, in which you learned the difference among the between the presupposition and entailment. You learned about the presuppositions, kinds of the presupposition, the triggers of presuppositions, etc. So in case of any confusion, you can ask question in the WhatsApp group, and you can also discuss with me in the class discussion zone. Well, dear students, it was all about today's class. Here I'll wind up the session. Take care. Allah Hafiz.